är motsatsen till deras tomma prat. Vision Europa är syd, väst, öst och nord som kommer samman och firar våra respektive länder och vårt gemensamma Europa. Vision Europa är historia, nutid och framtid. Vision Europa är där vi européer möts och kan dela med oss av varandras kulturer och erfarenheter utan att tvinga på någon annan någonting. Och det är precis så det ska fungera. Därför är det min stora glädje att kunna välkomna kvällens andra talare från Danmark, från Danskernes parti. En varm applåd för Daniel Carlsen.
Hello everybody, I'm very glad to be here today. It's an honor to be with so many courageous nationalists from all over Europe and especially here in Sweden. I'm very impressed of all you guys and what you can do. You have achieved very much in a short time, in that short time that Danskernes parti has existed. You can be very proud of yourself. But honestly, we shouldn't be here today. You guys should be out at the parliament and take back what is yours. I will introduce myself shortly. I came here yesterday and I assumed that we all face the same problems in Europe. But in some countries, the problems is maybe slightly different than they are here in Western and Northern Europe, where we experience mass immigration as the biggest problem. But to start with, I will tell you a little bit about myself and about the party that I represent, Danskernes parti. My name is Carlsen. I am 22 years old and I live in Jutland in Denmark together with my girlfriend and my daughter. I'm the leader of Danskernes parti, the Danish party, as you might call it in English. Our party was founded in June 2011, so we are almost 2 years old. Our activities are this year, they are primarily political as we are running for our first election this year in November. There are regional and communal elections in Denmark. Many have asked me what I expect from the elections, and it is very difficult to say. In Denmark there haven't been any nationalistic party represented in either the government or in the local parliament since Second World War. So if we took place in any town or region, it would be historically. I hope that we do so, and we work hard on doing so. But it's difficult to say what our expectations are, as we have never run for elections before. But I certainly hope, and we work for, that we can be represented in a local parliament. As Danskernes parti also works with national solidarity, so do we. We have had a lot of activities where we try to solve some of the problems that our countrymen are facing. Each day, the people of ours are victims of the multiculturalist criminal politics that are led in the country. We are losing our welfare to foreigners who have never been Danish and who will never be Danish. Our own countrymen, the Danes, are exploited. They take their money, but they will have nothing in return. So we try to get the situation better for our countrymen, just as Danskernes parti also did, and as we see that a lot of European nationalistic party does. And I think that is one of the greatest things that we can do, because right now, even though that we experience a lot of good things, we are moving forward as parties, as movements. But we are not about to make a revolution tomorrow. But what we can do is make a revolution in people's lives, in people's everyday life. We can be not just a parliamentary alternative to multiculturalism, we can be a social alternative. And that may be more important at the moment. What I'm going to talk about is primarily my new book, which comes out in next week on Wednesday, and I know it will also be sold here in Sweden, not today I think, but on Arminius. When I arrived here yesterday, I always like to come to new places and visit new countries. It's always exciting to experience different cultures, even though that we are pretty much the same. We have some differences. For example, the language, that's why I speak in English. No one understands me. I speak Danish. But the first thing I did was I had a 5-hour journey from Europa here to Stockholm. So I turned on the radio to hear what's going on in Sweden. The first program I heard was a program about Africa. The Africans are against Asian immigration, and the hosts of the radio program was very supporting of that idea. You can't just come and take the Africans' land. Of course not. A half an hour later, the same radio station, there was a program about Swedish immigration policy that is so terrible because we deny immigrants to come in and take over the Sweden country. So that was my first impression of Sweden. And then I came here. It's much better, but I also switched channel for a moment. I would like to hear what are the culture. The first was a radio talk show, and the next program I heard was some I don't know what you call it, P3. P3. What music do you hear? Rihanna, Lady Gaga. No Swedish musicians, but it's the same in Denmark. So, what we are experiencing in these times is that we lose our fatherlands to forces that don't care about either our culture or our rights. And that's something of what I'm going to talk about today. The most of us Europeans knows, as I said, I experienced here yesterday that, for example, in Ukraine, mass immigration is isn't the biggest problem they have. But as most of us Europeans know, mass immigration is a big threat to our countries. And we also know that mass immigration is bad for us. But okay, let's face it. One day you can argue against multiculturalism. And the multiculturalists, journalists, politicians, or whatever disguise they wear that day, they will slap you in the face with an example of a good immigrant. A Muhammad type of guy who may be higher educated than you, he maybe do more charity than you, and he may be just brighter, sweeter, and better than you. It could be. Okay, but he will certainly gain his own country more than he could ever gain ours. Classical point, we use it often. I have at least used it several times, and it is correct. But is that our point? It would probably be good for whatever third world country to receive a bunch of charity Muhammads. I'm sure of that, and I would even be happy on their behalf. And I would certainly not be jealous of them taking back Muhammad. So there's nothing wrong in pointing that out. But is our point really that Muhammad should return for the benefit of his homeland? No, it's not. Our point is that we just don't want any Muhammads in our country. For some people it will seem ignorant to reject all parts of multiculturalism, as it is only some of the consequences that so-called common people don't like. But who's to judge the individual immigrant? It is impossible to do so. Some say that Denmark has the toughest immigration policy in the world. Okay, let's just assume that this is correct, and hereby conclude that even tough restrictions do not change the reality of multiculturalism. The pattern of criminals and victims is the same all over Europe. And even in Denmark, the non-Western immigrants are highly overrepresented in the crime statistics. That is why we need to ask ourselves, what are we willing to accept in return of upholding a multicultural society? How many rapes, how many murders, how many terrorist attacks can be accepted? It's easy for me to say. I won't accept a single incident. Why should I accept something like that? In my opinion, multiculturalism is rubbish. I can't see any good things of it. But someone certainly can, but they have to say, okay, we think that multiculturalism is great. Fine for me. But what do you want to accept in return? So the point is that we need to force the multiculturalists to be concrete when they argue in favor of multiculturalism. How valuable is their utopia really? Right now it seems that the current politicians are willing to accept almost everything just as long as multiculturalism lives on. Of course, they will never tell just how much they are, in fact are accepting. They will talk about social and not ethnic problems. They will tell us of all the sweet Muhammads, but they will not say how many bad Muhammads the sweet Muhammads are worth. They will talk about the oh-so-sweetie Zlatan Ibrahimovic. But multiculturalists won't tell how many brilliant footballers we need before it is okay to experience a few terrorist attacks here and there, a few rapes here and there. In Denmark we also had Zlatan, an immigrant who was a promising footballer, a rising star. The difference between our Zlatan and the Zlatan from Sweden is that our Zlatan is charged for having planned a terrorist attack. We'll accept a terrorist, not many I guess, but if we ought to protect ourselves against terrorist immigrants, we must be consequent. Rejecting multiculturalism may cause that we miss out on important Zlatan to our national football teams.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. But it also causes that we won't accidentally import terrorists. And what is really most important. But so far we still haven't reached the main point in my new book, which is called Odels ret til Danmark. I don't know exactly how to translate the title into English, but it means that the Danish people has an inherited right to possess Denmark. And that is really the central argument I use to claim the Danish people's legal demand on Denmark. There are many reasons to reject multiculturalism. Some of the reasons has just been mentioned. It is bad for our society that we import criminals, whether or not it was intended to do so. It is bad for our society that we import low IQ immigrants, as a still more demanding society demands a still higher average intelligence, and certainly not lower. With that knowledge, it is logical to reject all of multiculturalism, at least just in case that the wrong people passed our borders, even if we tried to sort them out. Furthermore, research tells us that multiculturalist societies are dysfunctional, that people feel unsafe, and from history we know that mixed societies often cause civil wars. So, there are a number of logical reasons to defend that kind of nationalism that we represent. But is our struggle only justified by reason? It is also justified by reason. But for me, there is at least just an important reason to fight. I keep fighting day after day because I want freedom and I want justice. When our opponents talk about so-called human rights, it may seem as they fight for morality. But we should never accept multiculturalism as a morally righteous ideology. Being aware of the consequences of multiculturalism, no one should be able to talk about this society as something that is based on a higher moral. Despite that the word multiculturalism explicitly celebrates several cultures, multiculturalism is in fact suppression of whatever nation's original culture and of the native inhabitants. Multiculturalism calls for immigration and claims that all people are not just equal, but also the same. A Swedish knows more Swedish than a Somali. I think that they may have a cold if they can't smell the difference. But this logic is the same as saying that no people really exist. And through this logic, we, the Europeans that are forced to embrace multiculturalism, must perish by time, as our exclusive rights are ignored as a consequence of that we as a people are ignored. In other words, multiculturalism is genocide.
Yes.
There are no morality whatsoever in advocating genocide.
Good.
On the other hand, there is a great morality in defending one's people and its future, especially when your defense is a shield against an ongoing genocide. As we defend our people against a genocide, we should be celebrated. After all, multiculturalism is the worst genocide ever to be pointed out in history. Around 700 million Europeans are potential victims. And we all know how a guy like Elie Wiesel is celebrated. I guess and expect that we will be celebrated 100 times as much when we have survived and defeated multiculturalism.
Yeah.
But I do not think that our best arguments are pointing out how multiculturalism is a genocide. In general, I think that we do best when talking about what we embrace and what we want, rather than what we reject and what we dislike. Therefore, we ought to talk about our conception of moral, our conception of freedom, and our conception of justice. We shouldn't compare it to the misconception of so-called human rights. Why should we? We should just keep on insisting on our values, on our morality, and on our true, good and beautiful version of freedom and justice. I believe that our finest job is to spread the message of the alternative moral standards that we represent. The moral standards that recognize every people its own country. The moral standards that celebrate global diversity, if this equals that our people is preserved. Why even bother discuss the accusation on our intention to conflict with the so-called human rights? We can't discuss them, as we don't know what humans are. Have you guys ever seen a human? I sure have. I've seen Danes, Swedes, Germans, Chinese, Japanese, Nigerians, and so forth. but a human? No. There is no such thing as a human without nationality. So instead of entering the multiculturalist field, we ought to stand firm on the true, good and beautiful. I know that there are differences between people, between nationalities and ethnic groups. And I have a worldview that acknowledges each people its own right to its own land. It is not, and it will never be, my duty to fight for other people's rights. But it is, and it will always be, my duty to fight for my own people's right. But of course, it is also my duty to contribute to my fellow Europeans' struggle for the same freedom and justice. And I do believe that our moral and noble vision, or European vision you might say, must be the very core of what we communicate as our ideals. The core of what we represent and present to the people who shall join us in our struggle for freedom and justice, for the preservation of our heritage. That is some of my arguments in my new book. It may seem difficult to get our vision out in the public, especially when we read the newspapers that define love of other people, of one's people, as hate. But a man once said that you know that you have done your job right when the hostile press attacks you. And sometimes we must keep that in mind. But I must be honest and say that I truly fear what lies ahead of us. What lies ahead of Europe in the future. I'm not really concerned about our possibilities to re-raise a true European and nationalistic nation. Just imagine what a strong force and what a beautiful society we could create together. Together with fellow nationalists all over Europe. Already by now, I think the possibilities exist to raise a flourishing nation, as we are so many people all over Europe that fight for the same. But we are split up in different nations. But if the situation keeps continuing, it might be possible to go together in one nation. So I don't fear that nationalism will die or that Europeans will cease to exist. But it would be naive to state that we easily within a few decades can change all of Europe to the better. Such changes will demand an even bigger breakthrough than we have seen in Greece lately, which may be the most promising development in Europe in a very long time. We have to face realities. Demographics is working against us. With mass immigration and low European birth rates, as Dan also talked about, the odds of taking back our countries get still smaller. Democracy is demographics, which will speed the development even more up as the so-called minorities gets bigger. In the last election in the United States of America, we got a taste of what demographics means in a democracy. Almost all blacks voted for a black president who even represented a more liberal immigration policy than did his white Republican opponent. As newborn whites in the US are a minority already by now, the Democrats didn't need many white votes when they have already conquered the lots of the black votes. This has led to a discussion within the Republican Party on how to attract the black and Hispanic voters. This will cause, of natural reasons, that the Republican immigration policy will be more liberal. And that development we will also experience in Europe soon, I'm sure. But does this mean that our fight are worthless? No, of course not. As I already mentioned, at least we will have the potential to create a nationalistic nation with fellow European nationalists. As our numbers grow, the potential will be even bigger. So does the parliamentary potential. But we must also prepare upon a situation where we can't beat the existing demographics. Therefore, I'm pleased to see that nationalists all over Europe build up small communities already. We help those of our people who have been neglected by society. We create our own media and we try to live the true vision of nationalism. This is the best preparation we can do, and this makes a seminar as Vision Europe even more important, as we can gain knowledge and experience from each other. For example, according to build small communities and in creating a social alternative to multiculturalism. The nationalistic protest that we experience almost all over Europe gives us hope. Even though demographics are working against us, it is still possible to make the necessary changes. I pray and work for a political solution on the mess the multiculturalists have created. And I believe that we can drive the progress we experience now even further. We have a big threat though, and it is almost within our own ranks, so to speak. The social conservative movement is unfortunately ahead of us, at least here in Scandinavia. But I will again refer to the good development in Greece, where the nationalists from Golden Dawn took all of the social conservative party's vote at the last election. The problem with the social conservative is that many people do believe that the social conservatives have and will make the necessary change to give us back our countries. Many good Europeans are engaged in social conservative parties, but the social conservatives is no solution. Let's just assume that we could gain economically from a certain immigration. Would that justify that the immigrants took over our countries? No way. Let's just assume that Muslim immigrants converted to Christianity. Would that make any difference? No. The problem isn't Islam. The problem is the demographic meltdown of our people. If there are no If there are no Europeans left in Europe in 100 years, who cares if Europe is an Islamic republic? The social conservative solution is superficial and will not solve our problems. But we still must keep in mind that the people who support the social conservatives are not our enemies. Not even the people who support the liberals or the Marxists are our enemies. Our enemies is the ideologies. The common people is ours to win back. If we don't win them back, it is us who failed. Last year we started a campaign in Denmark with flyers about the Social Conservative Party, Danish People's Party. We told about how they have been responsible for mass immigration to Denmark, and even was proud of it. In the flyer we also informed about how the Danish People's Party have been responsible for handing out over 80,000 Danish citizenships to non-Westerners. At Danish People's Party's annual meeting last year, we gave the flyer to over 500 members of the party. We talked to them, and many of them told us that they were disappointed of Danish People's Party, but they didn't know any alternative. So they were very glad to hear that there are now a party who can challenge Danish People's Party. At least we can push them in the right direction, many stated. And since we have launched this campaign, we have in fact experienced that many people from Danish People's Party are coming over to us. Maybe it seems very confrontative that we show up to a big meeting of theirs. But in Denmark, this party is synonymous with nationalism, even though they do not advocate nationalism. I believe that we must challenge them with the facts of their policies. Their supporters should know that they are in fact a party that stand up for what they believe in. They should know that the consequences and what the consequences of so-called integration is. Integration is multiculturalism, because who's to integrate if we repatriate the immigrants? No one. What might be the most important is to present our vision. So far, I haven't met any supporter of the Danish People's Party who doesn't support the idea that the Danish people are entitled to Denmark. And how will anyone ever argue against this? By stating that Denmark belongs to everybody. By stating that anyone can become Danish. No one believes in such things. But the biggest challenge is to get our message out to the right people. In the future, I'm sure that we have to confront the social conservatives even more. We should not tell how we dislike them, because they are not our enemies. They are our friends, who one day shall come home to us where they belong. We should go out and tell them what we want to do, which society we want to create. But what might be most important of all, we should show them what we already have created. The social alternative we try to create will be our biggest force in the future, I'm sure. No matter how we are going to realize our European vision, no matter how we are going to win. Because we will win. No one can stop us.